Okay, so we're going to review the completely installed fuel system. So I'm going to get Mike to come on over and we'll take a look. Just as we talked about earlier on in the video segment, you can see that we have all of the hoses coming off the front using the fittings on the aeromotive system. So those are O-ring Boss or ORB fittings, and they adapt to the Dash 6AN. So what I've actually done is I've marked with electrical tape with white the fuel feed, so that way when it's up in the air and the tank is installed, I knew which hose was the feed, which hose was the return, and then which was the vent. Right, so we have the vent, which is actually just standardized hose. It's not braided any kind, and we have it tied up to the factory vent location. So there was actually a vent bar that went across here on these model years with a canister, and this is the rollover protection valve. So it's actually a vent with a check ball in here. So it allows the tank to vent to atmosphere unless you roll over. If the vehicle rolls over, the check ball travels up and blocks the outlet, or the vapor outlet, so that way fuel doesn't spew everywhere. So it's a safety feature. So that's actually a Summit Racing rollover valve.
Nice.
It is the exact same thing as the Tanks Inc. rollover valve.
Okay.
So it's just same thing, rebranded.
We'll drop a link.
Yeah, we'll drop a link to it. So as you can see, the hoses are routed up over here. I have a line insulator clamp right here separating the feed and the return lines. The feed and the return lines go to quick connect fittings, fuel fittings. And here in my hand, I actually have, this is the 2000 through 2005 Corvette fuel filter regulator.
That's what everybody's using.
That's what everybody uses. They use them for LS swaps, is where they really became popular, but this is the exact same thing you would need for a Hemi swap. It's a cheap and effective fuel filter, for one, and a regulator. So it regulates the output pressure of the fuel pump to consistent 60, 70 PSI. It doesn't allow it to go over that, and anything over that, what it'll do is you'll see the smaller 5/16 quick disconnect fitting. This is the return. This is the 3/8 quick disconnect fitting. This is the feed. So you have your feed from the outlet of your fuel pump coming in. Anything over, like if it checks the pressure, makes sure that it's at the correct level, and it returns anything over. So you don't have crazy high fuel pressure up at the rail.
Mm-hmm.
So there's fuel coming in. Anything excess is returning back this way to the tank, and then you have the discharge, which is this side. It says out. This is actually coming all the way to the fuel rail. So you can see here the discharge of it with the quick connector to AN adapter, and then I have the line routed in the exact same location as the factory fuel line. So these holes in the frame, those bolts with new insulated clips, are holding the fuel line to the factory routing of the fuel line. So it comes down the subframe, around the top of the leaf spring hanger, down the side of the vehicle, through the torsion bar cross member, and then up all the way to the fuel rail on the engine. So that's the whole premise of using the Corvette filter regulator. It regulates your pressure to where it needs to be for the command of the Hemi. You need, fuel injection needs right at that. It's 58.5 psi. That's the average. If you're acquiring 58.5 psi, you're good. Anything between that and 70 is ideal. So it's great. You only have 2 short lines to the tank, and you only have to run one line all the way up to the fuel rail on the engine. And that's why many people use these. A couple things you want to look out on these for is do not buy the knockoffs. Always buy OEM, so AC Delco from GM, or Wix. Those are 2 very good brands. Again, we'll put the link down in the bottom of the video. You can get them from Amazon. You can get them for a fair price, but don't use off brands. You will see tons of problems using the off brand of these. They just won't work right. They won't regulate fuel pressure correctly. Now, there are some kits on eBay, Amazon, those things, where they include the fittings you need with it. So it's the fuel filter regulator, the male 3/8 quick disconnect, the female 3/8 quick disconnect, and the female 5/16 quick disconnect. Those are really good bargains. So I would look at those. Just make sure it uses a good quality fuel filter.
So the fuel line that we bought, I remember we bought it on Amazon too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And did it have the end connections we needed already?
It did not. So we bought just basic. This is a 30-foot kit. So this is 30 foot of fuel line.
Mm-hmm.
It used nearly all of it between the two branches we need for feed and return, and all the way to the front of the vehicle. A couple things you need to look out for there is make sure when you read in the description it is compatible for all fuel types. You know, you go to most fueling stations now and they are some sort of an ethanol blend. There are some of these braided hoses that cannot handle alcohol-based blends. They can't handle ethanol, so they will deteriorate over time. And actually, you know, it'll just clog up your fuel filter. It'll clog up your injectors, and you're defeating the purpose of kind of that daily drivable vehicle, right? If you're constantly having fuel problems. So make sure you get an ethanol compatible fuel line.
Okay, and do you have to crimp your own ends on there, or how does that work?
You don't crimp your own ends. They are universal ends. So what it is the 6AN barbed fittings. It has a nipple, like a barb that fits in, and then you have a sleeve. So the first thing you do is you have the open raw end of the hose. You put the sleeve on first, and then you put the barb in and you tighten it down with wrenches. So let's see if I might actually have one up here in the toolbox. So this is the way it works. You get the universal fuel line. This is actually one for like a power steering with an inner Teflon, but same principle. You'll actually take the sleeve, put this on the hose first until the rubber comes all the way to the end of it, the end of the base, and then you'll take this, push it in, and when you tighten it, it forms a compression fitting, and that's how you make it up. So you want to buy some straight hose ends, and a 90 for the top. When it hits the fuel rail, you got the 90 over because the fuel rail quick disconnect, you know, points straight up on the car engines. So you have to get a 90-degree fitting. Now, here's another quick tip for you that are looking to save some money. We couldn't do it for this car because it had undercoating sprayed on it after the fact. What you can actually do is you can reuse the factory 3/8 hard fuel line on these cars. Let's say if it were a big block car that came factory with a 3/8 inch fuel line instead of just the 5/16 inch, you could keep all this intact. You would have the hard line ran exactly where it is. But right here, as you get close to the engine compartment, you would use a tubing cutter, cut the hard line, and you can use a AN fuel fitting that actually is a compression fitting. It'll have an inner ring in here that's made out of brass, and when you slide it over your hard line tube and crimp it down, that ferrule bites into the tubing and it converts from hard line to braided line. So with the hard line, kind of a few good things about that is that's less rubber that could potentially deteriorate over time, and then you also have much cleaner runs. So a hard line is pre-bent to fit the floor pan beautifully, and it'll just look a little bit prettier. That's also an option. You'll save some money there. You only have to buy about 10 feet of hose in that case. We couldn't do it here because the hard line was covered in undercoating, so we couldn't clean it off to get a good crimp.
What are these little... These are just what's
rubber. You can buy them by bulk from Summit Racing, Amazon, eBay, all that good stuff. Just make sure you get it for the correct diameter. And what it does is it helps secure the line, and you don't have to worry about the clamp, you know, cutting into the line and, you know, having fuel spray everywhere.
That's awesome. Super clean job. Great job, Blake.
That is the fuel system. Very basic. It's very simple. Hopefully this, you know, remove some of that complexity from you. If you're worried about how difficult the swap may be, this is one other bit of information that we hope convinces you it's well worth it.
Please like and subscribe. But Mom, Hemi,